What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another RoboTaxi Report. We're going to take a look at the RoboTaxi results as we finalize the last bit of 10.8.1's data. We'll look at disengagements versus interventions and include an early look at 10.10.2 over Saturday night and Sunday. And then we'll follow that up with the fan favorite from last week's episode with the donut of causation. If you stick around to the end of the video, we'll take a look at a community-based FSD tracker that can help you get involved with the growing data pool of beta information. Alright, let's get into it. Following the cadence of the last few weeks, we're looking here now at 6 weeks of information regarding 10.8.1 with RoboTaxi trips. Now, to clarify again, a successful trip requires 0 disengagements. You have to imagine a case where the customer can get from pickup to drop off with no intervention from the driver, because if the driver wasn't there, you wouldn't want them to be stranded. Now, this last week is notably less in the total trip amount, but that's because on Saturday we did get the 10.10.2 update. And on that topic, let's go ahead and merge these 6 weeks of information together and see how it measures out to the first couple of days of 10.10.2. Now, I can't blame you for being initially shocked at what you're seeing here, but keep in mind the sample size. 10.8.1's been going on for 6 weeks. We had over 300 trips with a rather impressive exact 50-50 split. Honestly, that part blows my mind. But when looking at the first 13 trips taken on 10.10.2 over Saturday evening and Sunday, you can see quite the drastic drop in reliability, down to 31%. Now again, this is a very new software patch with not a lot of information on it, so I would like everyone, if they can, to try to dismiss what you're seeing now when considering how much more information we do have to gather. It doesn't take away from the importance of just how drastic the drop is. This could very well be the first indicators of a regression in the system. Now don't get too alarmed. This is something that can happen, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or however the analogy goes. But over a larger sample and more time, we'll be able to iron out just where 10.10 stands in comparison to 10.8. Now here we have a continuation of city versus highway disengagements. I went ahead and just added the subsequent 7 days. That way we could look at a bit of a larger sample size instead of just like 2 data points from 1 week to the other. But something I need to mention that's important for all graphs going forward is that I've made a bit of a switch from the more is better idea to less is better. So I've gone from kilometers per disengagement now to disengagements per kilometer. And this is something that's been asked by several people in the comments, and a suggestion that's been made several times before to look at it in this way because it's a bit more intuitive and easier to follow, that you want the line going down. And now, as you can clearly see here toward the right of the graph, we got a little bit of a problem. And that sharp uptick, that problem, is none other than 10.10.2. We have a massive increase in city-based disengagements. Now, highway, you can pretty much expect to sit around the area it is, aside from February 12th. That was a notoriously bad day. I don't know if that's one of the days that we had rain or what, but every now and then, the car just has a bad day. But since the highway stack is effectively the same as it's been for quite a while, at least to the best of our knowledge, you really wouldn't expect much difference between the public or highway build between beta stacks. Now, how that will change in the future when we finally have a merger is to be determined. I'm very excited for that. Now, while this uptick is alarming, again, keep in mind, very new, not a whole lot of information yet, but a clear indicator in the direction we don't want to go. I've already seen a lot of comments about 10.10.2 being a regression or being worse or going the other way. And that's very well possible. And what you can count on from me is that over time, you're going to get that information. Everything that I put out, I aim to be as accurate, as objective, and as trustworthy as possible. That way, over time, my credibility builds and you guys can feel warm and fuzzy about the information you're seeing coming from me. I will never sugarcoat the system or make it sound like it's better than it is. I'm here for the hard science. And I'm definitely curious to see where that line's going to go next week. Next on our list, I decided to bust out a new bar graph and show you disengagements versus interventions, keeping the same idea that less is better, because we're going on a disengagement per kilometer basis, intervention per kilometer basis. Now to the left, we have the prior week from the last episode, and to the right, we have our current week, including 10.10.2. Again, that was the tail end of Saturday and Sunday, but it's got quite a large impact. You can see that the disengagements have increased while the interventions have come down. Now, at risk of speculating a little too much, I will say that some of the ways the vehicle seems to have improved is in its finesse and its control when it comes to leaving stoplights and stop signs and cornering, particularly right-hand corners, as well as getting into lanes, like turning lanes, merge lanes, or just general lane changing. There is a very tangible difference in how it operates. It's a lot smoother, almost to the point of where you wonder if it's going to fully get over into the lane you need to, because it's so gradual. My initial response to this in my first 50 or so kilometers, 100 kilometers, was uneasy, but rapidly started to smile because it felt like the car had gained some pretty impressive finesse. You can actually see an example of it when it comes to the vehicle braking before the truck that pulled out in front of me in the last Friar's video. I can link that Friar's challenge video in the description for you so you can check it out after this. But as I've said with other graphs, we need more information. We need to see where this is going to go over time. So far, it definitely does seem like I am a lot less frequently on the throttle or canceling lane changes. Those integral interventions that actually matter. Moving on from disengagements and interventions, we can now focus in on simple disengagements versus critical. The graphic you're seeing comes courtesy of my buddy Ben, who's been working in the background in a really awesome FSD tracker that's allowed me to digitize a lot of my logs throughout the day to paint a picture of what's actually happening on city as well as highway, day versus night, and over different versions of the beta now that we finally have an update. I definitely want to incorporate his work more in the future, but in this example you can see 10.8.1 on the top and then both versions on the bottom, keeping in the same format of disengagements per kilometer, so less is better. And at the top, there's quite a big uptick in simple disengagements due to the fact that I did a lot more driving last week. Several days were 400, 500 kilometer days, so naturally you would expect there to be more simple disengagements, and inversely, less critical. Now it again becomes pretty obvious on the bottom graph that this doesn't look too great. That's because the simple disengagements over 10.10.2 are just going up. I've already said a few times, small sample size, take it with a grain of salt, but also be prepared to see a degradation in performance and try not to let it get to you too badly. The important thing to consider here is the difference between simple and critical. So simple disengagements are just all the little nuanced annoying things like missing a lane or just doing something wonky on the road that isn't a threat to anybody. It's not dangerous. It's not potentially life-threatening or damaging to your vehicle or another person or property. Critical is. Critical disengagements are where you're taking over because you're about to either run a red light or go way too fast through a corner and go off the road or go into oncoming traffic or have a questionable scenario with a pedestrian, a cyclist, something. Critical is bad. And there's one silver lining here. If you look at that same graph with 10.10.2 included, critical is still trending downward. It's not super easy to see because that line looks rather flat, but if you step back a little bit, that is ever so slightly trending downward. As long as the safety concerns are staying mitigated and heading in the right direction, I'm not too worried. The simple stuff will be ironed out over time. I apologize if the colors make it a little difficult. I know the background and the simple disengagement part of the graph are pretty close, but hopefully everything that I've said is well visualized here. Oh, and on the subject of all the simple disengagements, here we're looking at our good old fan favorite, the donut of causation. This one in particular is covering 10.8.1 in totality, all 81 disengagements over 3,184 kilometers. And as you saw last time, predominantly that's navigational, or in other words, the simple stuff, lane change, proper function on the road, just the basics, things that would cause you to miss your turn, miss your exit, generally frustrate you, but not really be a super bad deal. Things that are more of an annoyance and a mystery as to why the car can't perform them. There are plenty of times where you just kind of shake your head like, why? Why couldn't you do that? That was so easy. Anyway, moving on, we have, construction, just like last time, is the next biggest category. This is anything that has to do with construction, whether it's vehicles, people directing traffic, cones, new asphalt with no lane lines, anything construction related that can make your car freak out. Unsafe is an extrapolation on this speed category from last week's episode, because on top of just excessive speed into a corner, there are issues where the car might jump a lane and there's another vehicle really close to you, and it could end in a scenario that leaves you both pretty unhappy. This category basically is anything that, someone would honk at you for, or throw you an obscene gesture, or yell, or just look at you funny, because you're creating a potentially unsafe scenario with you and another driver or pedestrian. And definitely one of the reasons we need to be very attentive. Legal, just like last week, is the same, dealing with legal concerns, whether it's a no turn on red, one-way streets and your car maybe goes the wrong way, getting into oncoming traffic lanes, and one of the biggest ones being red lights. Now, I hate to do this, but apparently it's necessary, especially after seeing the CBS coverage of the beta uncensored or whatever. If your vehicle is going to run a red light, don't let it. Tap the brake, take over, hit the camera button to report it. Don't be that tester that lets your car run a red light or run a stop sign or do something that you know is illegal. That's just as bad as Consumer Reports showing everyone how to hack autopilot, or some kid trying to get views by hopping in the passenger seat. Don't be that person. The last thing we need is some moron to let the car do something illegal and then regulators crack down even harder than they already are, and we all get set back, and I'm stuck with 10.10.2 for 2 months. No, but seriously, be responsible. Don't give me a reason to go on rants here. Moving forward, we have the red wheel scenario, which is, basically anytime you get the forced disengagement. Typically this happens on the highway at interchanges where you're going from one highway to another, or when you're just getting on an off-ramp or an on-ramp. It's weird when it happens, and I'm not really sure why it does happen. One example that is kind of obvious is if you saw the Friar's challenge recently, the one I just posted on Sunday, we quite predictably get the red hands going through one of the exits. It's definitely alarming when it happens, and hopefully it'll be less and less of an issue going in the future. The human factor is just what it sounds like. Anytime another driver, pedestrian, cyclist, person on a scooter, longboard, whatever the case, if you have to disengage because of that encounter, then that's human related. Bus just has to do with any time you're behind a bus coming to a stop, or a bus lane, or just something where your vehicle is improperly acting around a bus. With road hazard, you can imagine potholes, anything that could fall out of a truck, something in the road, ladder, couch, wheel, whatever you would need to dodge that the car likely will not do on its own. Avoid damage and look out for road hazards. Roadside may not be as intuitive, but it's basically anytime there's someone on the shoulder providing aid on the road, on the highway, on city streets, whether it's an emergency vehicle, ambulance, police, fire engine, tow truck, or just simply people on the side of the road because their car broke down. Sometimes they're a little close to the shoulder, and other times even actually kind of into the far right lane on the highway or far left lane. For safety's sake, it's important to keep your eyes out for that. Generally, the car's pretty good about going around, but I've had at least 2 cases where I've had to take over because it's just a little too close for comfort. So we can take all these categories and look at the first 2 days of 10.10.2 and start to see how it compares. Now, I haven't had anywhere near as much time on this system, but you can already see where the navigational side is taking over. And then because of this holiday weekend that we just had with President's Day, the human factor went through the roof. There were so many more drivers on the road and pedestrians walking around downtown, all the areas of San Diego. And it really was like playing reverse Frogger. I had to dodge people left and right. It was wild. That's also some of the reason for the uptick in unsafe, because there were a lot of cases where the cars wanted to jump into a lane, but there was somebody already there on your bumper. One of the downsides to Tesla's never forgetting to use their turn signal is it basically tells every other driver around me to close the gap. I imagine as time progresses, the donuts will look more and more similar, but we'll see. The information will speak for itself. I loved all the feedback and appreciation for the donut of causation, so please let me know what you guys think. If you have any other categories or things that you'd be curious of what category they would fit in. The causation idea was definitely something random, but it got a lot of good feedback, and it felt good to know that the information was valued. Now, as promised at the beginning of the video, we're going to take a look at a community-based FSD tracker headed up by Elias Martinez. And it doesn't take much time to see how much effort he's put into this tracker. He's collected information on the types of cars used, the modes the cars are in, locations, critical disengagements versus simple, city versus highway, causation. We've been working together for a couple of weeks now on several things, bouncing ideas back and forth, and you can see his hard work reflected here on the screen. I'll include both a link to this dashboard and to Elias's Twitter account in my description, and I highly encourage any of you that are beta testers to get in contact with him and get involved with this community tracker. We're up to 71 testers with so much good information, and the more people we can get from all over the country, the better picture we can paint for how the system is doing. We all heard that there's north of 60,000 beta testers now, so I would absolutely love to see that testers number go through the roof. Just like Ben and myself, Elias is very picky about making sure that data is accurate. We value transparency, objective information, and real-world data on what the system is actually doing and what it's capable of. So please check it out, get in touch with him, join us in following the progress of the FSD Beta. The more good information and hard data we can get out there in the world and into more hands and in front of more eyes, the less likely it is that the media can paint these negative pictures with baseless accusation, fear tactics, and drama. We've got the numbers. We see what the system can actually do, and I'd venture to say that we testers as a group are largely realistic and responsible when it comes to how we're doing this. Now, perhaps that's just my hope, but I am nonetheless excited to see where all of this goes and how all this information compiles. I've got a lot of information collected, but I am just one person. I'm nothing compared to thousands of other testers. So let's get to chugging away and seeing what we find. If you made it this far, you rock. I really appreciate your support and your time. I'm extremely excited to have 10.10.2, to finally have an update after 6 weeks on 10.8.1. And now that I do, I can finally go forward with my science experiment to look at some of the options with the FSD and see if they actually have any meaningful difference when we choose them. I'm going to approach it the same way I do with my RoboTaxi videos, being very numbers and data forward, being a scientist. So get subscribed if you want to get notified when that video comes out. I'm aiming to do it this week, but on Thursday I am starting my trip up to Las Vegas to see some friends, so we'll see if I can get all that done in the same time. I'm planning to kind of bring you all with me as I film my road to Vegas, working my way up there, and then a whole bunch of shenanigans with my buddies in Vegas, driving around. Based on what I've seen already, 10.10.2 in Vegas will be entertaining, to put it lightly. And on that note, I'll be returning the following Tuesday. So the RoboTaxi Report, unfortunately, is going to be delayed to Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. I don't want to promise Tuesday and then not be able to follow through. I know I've been really good about getting these out every Monday, and I wanted to hold true to that. But the trip to Vegas is going to put a little wrench in that plan, so hopefully y'all can forgive me. But fear not, there will be a RoboTaxi video for this week that'll be featured Tuesday or Wednesday. Maybe I can throw in some data garnered from the Vegas trip. Thanks again for your time and the view, and all the feedback everyone's given me on these RoboTaxi reports. It's what's allowed me to grow these and get better at them. I'm getting closer and closer to 500 subscribers, which is really exciting for me because then I finally get the community tab and I can start putting out polls to vote and ask you guys things without having to wait till I've got a video up or going through the comments. So I'm excited there. I really appreciate the growth that I've experienced in the last 2 to 3 months. Again, all the links to the community tracker dashboard and Elias's Twitter are going to be in the description, and I will catch you guys in the next video.